Today, we're going to take a look at the jigsaw. Now, the jigsaw is especially known for cutting curves or bends. It's great for cutting out circles or in tight to reach spaces. But one thing to note is if you're going to use it on thicker wood, just know that the blade itself will flex back and forth, so you might not get as clean of a cut as you would with another type of saw. Choosing your blade, you want to make sure that you get the right one. So know what your shank is, T-shank or U-shank. And if you're picking up a new saw, I definitely recommend getting a T-shank as they are a lot easier to swap out. Also, one thing to note is what material you're cutting, as you can use a jigsaw to cut something even like sheet metal, and the type of finish that you want. And you'll notice too that the teeth on the blades point upwards, and that is because it's actually cutting as it's coming back up, so that it's helping you hold the saw down. But they do have blades that have the teeth pointing downwards so that they cut on the push rather than the pull. Also note that the blade's always going to face away from you, but in certain occasions, if absolutely necessary, you can actually flip the blade around, and just make sure that every time you put a blade in there, you square it up. So you do that by moving this lever here, and then you can see that your base plate moves and good to go, and lock it in. So you'll see here that there's settings from 0 to 3, and 3 is the most aggressive. If I set it to 0, you'll see that the blade just goes up and down, and that'll give you your nicer finish, a little bit of a slower cut. And if I set it to 3, you'll see that the blade actually starts to lunge forward. So it's a more aggressive cut. It'll cut a bit quicker, and it's a little bit rougher of a finish. And speaking of that, if you want a nice finish, make sure that you cut with the good side facing down. So it'll actually cause a little bit of tear out at the top, but you can help prevent this by putting down a piece of tape. And if you're cutting circles, it is a lot easier to do so on the 0 setting. Another thing to note is that some jigsaws will have speed settings, or in the case of this one, it's just in the trigger. So the more you pull the trigger, the faster it goes. And if you're cutting harder wood, I recommend cutting slower, as may end up causing burn marks on the lumber. Something to really keep an eye on too is know the depth of the blade and the thickness of the material. Just make sure you know what's under that piece. After you're cutting something out of the middle of the material, then there's two ways to do it. One is to drill a hole, but another way to do it is to set your blade up like this, start it up, and slowly set the jigsaw down into the wood, and it'll cut as you do so. The last tip I got for you is the bottom of mine has this plastic, so that allows me to slide on things a lot easier. But if you do have a metal one, I recommend either putting painter's tape under it, or you can use the double-sided tape and stick on something like plexiglass. So there are a few tips for using a jigsaw. If you have any other tips, or if there's anything that I missed, then please leave it in the comment section down below. I hope that you enjoyed the video and possibly learned something new, and I'll see you in the next one.